Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I have said on this platform and many others that a healthy and functioning democracy is only possible if the electorate are educated, knowledgeable, and diligent. It's one thing to say in a democracy is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Power rests with the people. But if they don't know what their power is, how to hold those in positions of power and authority to account, then it's no surprise at all that we end up with a totally dysfunctional system. And Zimbabwe's political system is, is dysfunctional. If I was to have a say in this issue of educating the people, I think one of the things I would strongly recommend is that it should be made compulsory to have animal farm taught at various levels in Zimbabwe education system. Because if the people understood animal farm and the way the pigs used fear to who they would understand what is going on here. In animal farm, whenever the pigs felt their hold on power threatened, they resorted to threats. Napoleon, ever since he booted Snowball out of the farm, was often surrounded by the dogs, representing the security that had forced Napoleon off the farm. And occasionally, if he sent out one of his lieutenants, one of the pigs, to do something which he wasn't too sure whether the rest of the animals would take it kindly to it, that pig would be accompanied by the dogs, as if to underline that this is a dictatorship ruled by fear, and to underline that they have the ability to deliver that fear, the dogs will be there. In the last few days, a video clip of Zimbabwe's general has been circulating. This is the gentleman. Comrade Anselmo Sanyatwe is the commander of the Zimbabwe Armed Forces, National Army. In the video clip, the commander makes it very clear that ZANU-PF must rule until the donkeys have horns. That if the people try to have regime change, the regime will use command vote. This is typical. The regime knows that the economy is in serious trouble. The party's popularity is sinking by the day. Corruption has been so rampant that literally every week there are 2 or 3 stories of corruption. And those involved in the corruption are even boasting about it, that they are untouchable. In a country where the economy has all but collapsed and millions are living in abject poverty, you can understand why the people are becoming very restless. And so the statement by Commander Sanyatwe is to be expected. The regime is fearing that its iron grip on power is slipping and is therefore then using threats, threatening the people that it is prepared to use force to retain power. This is not the first time this has happened. In 2008, and those who may have forgotten, the period 2000 to 2008 was one of the most dramatic periods in Zimbabwe's economic history. The nation's economy shrunk by a staggering 50%. Inflation soared to dizzying heights of 500 billion%. It really was impossible to do any meaningful economic activity. You could go into some of the big supermarkets like TM, OK, and the shelves were empty. Who could have the confidence of ordering something and put it on the shelf for sale when the prices are changing so fast? You could pick up something, but the time you take it to the counter, you may find that the price has changed, and not by 20%. You're talking of 3 times. That's how ridiculous the situation became. Who could quote to do anyone anything? A car mechanic. If you were to ask the person that, okay, I'll do your car service for the sake of argument, 500 trillion Zimbabwe dollars at the time. And you say to yourself, okay, that includes all the spare parts and so forth. Yes, yes. How long will it take you? Oh, it will take me maybe a week to do it. Fine, you agree. The car is dropped and you do the service and you're paid the agreed amount. You'd be surprised to find when you go back to the garage where you got the spare parts, you may find that whatever you paid for the spare parts last time, with the entire payment you've got for your services, it will not buy even half of the spare parts that you need. In other words, you have done the work for absolutely nothing. And the amount of money you spent on the spare parts, you have not even recovered half of it. Who would want to do business under those conditions? And so business ground nearly to a halt. And you can imagine the people were restless for change. ZANU-PF realized that the people were restless to change. And once again, the regime resorted to threats. Here is a video clip of a video recording of the then ZNA commander, Mnangagwa, speaking.
We wish to make it very clear to all Zimbabwean citizens that the security organization will only stand in support of those political leaders that will pursue Zimbabwe's value, traditions, belief, for which thousands of lives were lost in pursuit of Zimbabwe's hard-won independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the national interest. To this end, let it be known that the highest office on the land is a straitjacket, whose occupant is expected to observe the objectives of the liberation struggle. We will therefore not accept, let alone support or salute anyone with a different agenda that threatens the very existence of our sovereignty, our country, and our people. By the two crucial values, the first and most important, any report and action designed to create instability in Zimbabwe will be made by full force of law. All should be accountable for their actions. Security organizations have resolved.
As you can see in that clip, the police was represented by the then police commissioner Chowuri, and towards the end there, the gentleman was now Vice President Constantino Chiwenga. When that video clip was made public, the regime's ZANU-PF government of the day did not in any way denounce those who had made that ridiculous, outrageous statement, because ZANU-PF was heavily involved in that. However, it is important that we should not fail to realize that the 2008 to 2013 was a golden opportunity for Zimbabwe to have implemented the democratic reforms, which would have cut the ties that ZANU-PF has made over the years, capturing state organs like the army, the police, the judiciary, and so forth, making them into nothing less than departments of ZANU-PF, whose primary task now was to ensure that ZANU-PF remains in office until the donkeys have horns. The failure to implement even one token reform during that GNU cannot and must not be laid at the door of the army, the police, or anybody else. It was Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends who sold out. Mugabe bribed them, just as he has bribed all the other key personnel in the army, the SEC, and the judiciary, and so forth. He bribed them, the MDC leaders, with the trappings of high office. And the rest is history. Even now, these outrageous statements by Commander Sanyatwe will have absolutely no effect if the people were to focus on the real issue here. As much as ZANU-PF can use violence to intimidate and coerce, particularly the rural voters, to do as the regime pleases, what it cannot do is coerce people to attend the opposition rallies. It may try to bribe some of them, but it cannot coerce them. If the people of Zimbabwe should wake up to the realization that participating in these flawed elections is sheer futility, I believe that will mark the end of this dictatorship. If the people of Zimbabwe had not participated in last year's elections, for instance, I believe SADC, whose report of those elections they condemned as flawed and illegal, they would have been empowered or felt confident enough to go one step further and deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy. But when you have got millions of Zimbabweans participating in these flawed elections, Chamisa got nearly 2 million votes compared to Mnangagwa, who got just over 2 million. And then Chamisa's Triple C leaders went on to take up their gravy train seats, claiming that the elections in all those areas that they had won were free, fair, and credible. I think that swept the carpet from underneath SADC. If Zimbabweans themselves are willing to participate in these flawed elections and to accept the results, SADC or anybody else will find it very difficult to turn around and say, no, we'll disregard all that and declare the process flawed and illegitimate and come outright and deny the regime that emerges out of it as illegitimate, deny it political legitimacy, as they did in 2008. But this time, if people do stand their ground, I think we will see significant change. Am I confident that will happen? I'll be honest with you, I'm not. We have got the opposition whose supporters are so naive and gullible. They'll believe anything that their leaders tell them. Chamisa and company, as I said above, failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. And ever since, they've given up on implementing reforms. They've been participating in these flawed elections for a share of the spoils of power, which ZANU-PF was prepared to give them for their participation to give the process legitimacy. To their supporters, Chamisa has again and again assured them that the opposition was going to win. In 2018, Chamisa is on record telling the supporters that MDC alliance has stringent measures to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. We all know that the day after the election results were declared, Chamisa himself was the one saying the elections were rigged. This was repeated last year. Chamisa once again came forward and assured his supporters that Triple C was going to win big because he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. The day after the election results came out, he was once again out saying the elections were rigged. Our biggest problem, of course, is that we've got a very naive and gullible electorate that will believe anything they're told. As I said, 2028 is coming. And as things stand, ZANU-PF is definitely not implementing any reforms. Indeed, I think we may be confident that they are stepping up on their vote rigging activities. This should force those MDC Triple C supporters to open their eyes. So if the army is going to institute this command voting, they must ask Chamisa, what is it he has done to neutralize that command voting? It would be unusual for them to ask that question because they usually don't ask anything. But in the light of what is happening here, they must ask him. I think it will be very clear that there is nothing he can do to stop command voting. ZANU-PF is so desperate to hang on to power, it's going to use all the dirty tricks in its toolbox to win the coming elections. ZANU-PF wants to stay in power at all costs. We do not need to participate in these elections without the reforms implemented. If we stand our ground and not participate, the ZANU-PF will be forced to accept that the process is flawed and will be in a position to go back to a similar arrangement or something comparable to the 2008 to 2013 GNU. Hopefully this time we'll implement the reforms. But the key point is ZANU-PF is in a panic. They're desperate to win, to stay in power, and therefore then they are cranking up the fear factor. This is the last kicks of a dying horse. Of course, the advice is do not get anywhere near those thrashing legs. And what better way to make sure that we are nowhere near those thrashing legs of the dying dictatorship than making sure that we do not participate in the flawed elections? Think about it. Thank you very much for joining me tonight, and we'll hopefully see you tomorrow. 7 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwe time. Good night.